In each episode, we invite experts to share their passion and their leadership journey to help you in your next steps. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, hrcvision.com. Now, here's the host of Next Steps to Leadership, Dr. Stephen Oliver.
Well, hello and welcome to my podcast, Taking the Next Step to Leadership. As mentioned, I'm Dr. Stephen Oliver, or Dr. O. So welcome to the podcast. The purpose of my podcast, Taking the Next Steps, is to help younger and newer managers learn some stories from leaders about their successes and their opportunities in their leadership journey. They give tips, techniques about taking that next step. I invite senior leaders, I invite executives, business owners, authors, I invite human resource managers, nursing leaders, and training and development leaders to, again, come in and talk about their story in leadership. This podcast also is not just for new leaders. It can be for anyone who's taking that next step. What we're doing in America and around the world is taking the next step at all ages. So welcome. Really glad to have you all. So I have another wonderful guest today. This is a colleague and friend, Alaina Love. So glad to have Alaina. You were on my list, Alaina, as I was thinking of newer guests to have. So welcome. Let me tell you folks a little bit about Alaina Love. Alaina Love is the CEO of Purpose Linked Consulting, and she's a recognized expert in leadership, purpose, passion, and inclusion. She is the co-author of a book called The Purpose Linked Organization: How Passionate Leaders Inspire Winning Teams and Great Results. So we're going to learn a lot about that today. She is a former research scientist and an HR executive, so she brings some really good experiences from different backgrounds. Alaina Love has developed a passion profiler. That's a psychometric tool which identifies and measures employee passions and reveals how they are being used in the workplace and the work environment. She's also an avid thought leader, and she's written in some pretty prestigious publications, magazines, online journals. She's written for Bloomberg Business Week, the Washington Post, Harvard Business Review Online, and currently she writes a popular blog for Smart Brief on leadership. Alaina also has a member of Marshall Goldsmith's 100 Coaches. It's an organization of top coaches and leadership thinkers around the world. By the way, I use Marshall Goldsmith from his book Triggers 2015, and it's about how to create behavior that lasts. I use this for an emotional intelligence course that I teach. So I'm so glad to see you're connected to Marshall Goldsmith. Alaina was awarded the 2021 International Thought Leader of Distinction Award from MEECO Leadership Institute. That's really cool. She has another book in the works, so get ready, folks. Really excited. Alaina's new book is entitled Permission to Be You: Discover the Purpose and Passion to Bring Your Best Self to Everything and Everyone. So that's going to be released in September of 2025. So you probably will see another podcast, folks, next year. So welcome, Alaina. So really glad to have you. Thank you for coming.
It's fantastic to be with you again, Dr. O. It's been a long time since we've been together conspiring over good stuff around leadership. So this is so much fun. Thanks for having me.
It has. We worked together at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in a leadership development program for hospital leaders. And that was such a great time, great creativity and engagement.
Amazing.
So, Alaina, if you don't mind, first and foremost, just tell us a little bit. I mean, this is a big question, but tell us a little bit about what you're up to these days.
Oh my gosh. Well, a good deal of my time obviously has been consumed with conceiving and writing the new book that I'm going to be releasing in September of 2025. But the journey to birthing that book was really the result of the years that I've spent with leaders and their teams, helping them understand what their passions are and how to apply them effectively, both at work and in their lives for that matter. And it's been just a phenomenal journey of watching people grow and develop and embrace the fullness of who they are, and finding ways to bring the strengths of their passions to the work environment, and specifically to their interactions with one another and with individuals that they have to influence. So this whole body of work that I've been doing around passion and around the passion archetypes has really taken me to some very interesting places and helped me personally learn a lot, and help me translate those learnings across to my clients. So I feel like I pinch myself every day. I feel pretty lucky to do what I do. And I get to watch people transform before my eyes. And there aren't a lot of jobs where you can do that and see immediate results. So I'm fairly fortunate to do that.
Well, and I love what you said, Alaina, in respect to both professionally and people's professional lives, but personal lives. The more and more I do these podcasts, the more I learn that people are not just one thing. There are many things. They have many talents. And so I'm so glad that you made that comment.
Well, the one thing I would let your audience know that I have found to be universally true after doing this work for more than 20 years is that the things that I see leaders and managers struggle with in the work environment are often the very same things they struggle with in their personal lives or personal relationships, because you're you no matter where you go, right? You can't escape the you that you are. So the things that you learn and the efforts that you take to get better at what you do professionally will spill over into your personal life and vice versa. So it's a win-win whenever you engage in growth.
Yeah, that's so well said, and that's so great. So can we rewind a little bit? I actually remember after we worked on that project years ago that you were starting this and you were putting together the passion profiler, and I just can't believe the blink and time is gone. So it's never that long, but I remember that genesis of your work for this particular thing that you're doing. But can you just tell us a little bit about how your focus took you to purpose and passion and the beginnings of it?
Yeah, it's interesting. That actually began before I met you, believe it or not. It started when I was an HR executive for a large pharma company, and I was overseeing HR services and leadership development for the company in both domestically in the US for the sales and marketing division, and then around the world for all other groups. And through that experience, I got a really great sight line to what it took to lead effectively. And I worked with a lot of leaders who were struggling. I worked with some teams that were dysfunctional and learned a lot about what it really took to build high-performing teams. When I found myself in the interesting position of being told by my boss that I was his successor in the succession plan, I remember at the time feeling like, I'm not sure I want that job. I mean, I thought I did. I had been working towards it for years and years. But that moment said, I just felt like, no, this is not the next thing for me. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. There's something different I'm supposed to be doing. And even after struggling with that question for more than 18 months, I finally made the decision to resign and start my own business. And, basically with no plan B, by the way. Right. So I was like, don't try this at home. This is a closed course in a stunt driver, kind of those commercials that you see. And when I left, one of the things that occurred to me was that I didn't feel this sense of passion for what I was doing, even though I was really good at it. And I felt like there was a purpose I was here to achieve that this wasn't going to direct me towards if I stayed where I was. But if you had, pressured me to say, what's that purpose? I couldn't have described it to you. I had no idea. And so it left me really thinking, how many other people are we losing in an organization because we're not connecting people with a sense to have a sense of purpose in their work. We don't understand their passions. We're not aligning what we ask them to do with those things. And so they're looking for it someplace else, just like I was. And so I carried that notion around with me, and I describe it in my book as like a stone in my shoe for 7 years, trying to figure it out. it just bugged me and bugged me. It's like, there's something we're missing. There's something we're missing. And as an HR leader, I need to be able to figure this thing out. And like all good ideas, this one happened around the kitchen table, because that's where brilliance is born, by the way. If you really are struggling with any issue, go to your kitchen table, sit down, and have a conversation with yourself. The answers are going to show up.
And don't forget the coffee.
Absolutely. The coffee's a must. The coffee's a must. And so it was at that kitchen table that I realized there's a connection between purpose and passion, because I kept trying to sort of chase down this question by answering the how do you define purpose route. And then I realized purpose is so different for so many people, and the degree to which they understand it and can articulate it is so different for so many people that we can't define it as one thing. And in fact, over the course of your lifetime, there'll be many different opportunities that you have to achieve what you feel is a purpose. But what I realized then is that the passions that people exhibit are actually the outward expression of that purpose. When people are doing purposeful work and they're excited about it, it shows up in their demeanor and the things that they're passionate about and the things that they gain a lot of fulfillment from in the behaviors they exhibit. So that's where it occurred to me, I've got to figure out a way to measure passion. If I can do that, I get at purpose through the back door. And so that's where the work began, around identifying ways to measure passion by looking at the archetypal behaviors that who are passionate demonstrate. And I interviewed tons of people, tons of folks who were deemed as high potential people in their organizations, and started sort of mining for those little nuggets of passion that they were exhibiting and what excited them and what made them have a sense of meaning and fulfillment. And I asked them all kinds of questions, including what would it take for the company to keep you forever? You know, what would the company have to do to keep you forever? And they told me, they shared it with me, and they showed it to me. So once I did that, it was pretty easy for me to see that passion is really codified into 10 distinct archetypes that we all have, to greater or lesser degrees. So understanding those is really the secret for us figuring out how do we bring the best of who we are to what we do every day and make a difference and gain fulfillment at the same time.
Well, you've just said so much in this response. Thank you. I want to break it all apart. I mean, one thing that you said, Alaina, is about, people not being that happy. And a statistic I read a couple of years ago, or even maybe just a year ago, is like 80% of the people in the workplace today are not engaged, not happy. That's like shocking.
It's scary.
It's really scary that people are not. But I commend you for, I love that metaphor of the stone in the shoe, and, that urge for you to get out there, start your own business and explore this. I wanted to see if you don't mind just saying a bit more, because you started to talk about this connection between purpose and passion, and just clarifying a little more of that, because that was really fundamental what you were saying.
Yeah. So, I'm a scientist by training, so I think like that every once in a while. And so when I started down this route of trying to unpack this whole equation, purpose and passion seem to be, to me, like twin strands of DNA. They're connected, right, to one another. But I couldn't figure out what the connection really was. I knew that when I asked people, what is your purpose in life? I got all kinds of answers, but mostly, I got deer in the headlights looks, like, I don't know. I guess I'll know it when I see it, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
Most people gave me that answer. Some people had really thought about it and articulated it well. Some people thought, well, my purpose in life, I've had 2 kids, so my purpose in life is to raise great kids. And I never let them get away with that, because no one's ever told me my purpose in life is to raise a beast. And that's why I have these kids. So no, you're here for more than that. That might be part of it, but you're here for more. So what is that deeper meaning? And then when I began to see that certain people who felt like they had a real sense of fulfillment in what they were doing, and a real sense of meaning in what they were doing, for them, that really over time translated into a sense of purpose in what they were doing. They felt that their work was an extension of who they are, not just something they did for an economic means to an end. And that was really important. I mean, by the way, we all need to make a baseline level of pay in order to be happy. There's not, we don't want to, just work for free. And we have that, nagging need to have 3 meals a day. So
Right.
most of us need to make a living. But it's more than that. These people were looking for more than I'm being paid really well. They looked for a feeling that I'm bringing the best of who I am to what I'm doing every day. And I'm gaining something just from that experience. I am growing as a person in this role that I'm in. I'm not only learning new skills, but I'm learning more about myself. I've become more introspective. I'm making meaning from the experiences that I have, both professional and personal.
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to watch these people, as I alluded to earlier, that seemed to have this sort of magic going on for them in the environment they were in. I started to watch for and mine for what were the things that they showed externally that would give anybody standing on the outside looking in a clue that, hey, that's a person who's passionate about what they're doing. And as I began to observe those behaviors in those individuals, I started to realize I've been looking at this my entire career, my whole career. You have that light bulb moment where all of a sudden you get what you've been seeing. It's been right in front of you all the time. That was what it was like for me. I realized that the leaders and the teams that I had been working with when I was a corporate executive, there were folks among them who demonstrated those very same tendencies, those same behaviors. And I sort of started to package them into little buckets. The creator was the person who was the really artistic individual who really loved to express their ideas through some artistic means, but always with the intent to touch people emotionally. There were the individuals who were the conceiver types. These are the big idea people who loved thinking outside of the box. In fact, the more I work with conceivers, the more I'm convinced they don't have a box. It's all about playing in the space of ideas and possibilities. There were the processors and the discoverers and the teachers and the connectors and the altruistic folks, the altruists, the healers, the people who took responsibility for helping others through pain and discomfort. There were the transformers, the people who loved change. And if things weren't changing fast enough, they change it anyway, just to keep it right. And then the builders, who were all about great, big, hairy, audacious goals and pursuing them. Especially if they hadn't ever been done before, builders loved it even more. So I ended up with like these 10 buckets of behaviors that I saw consistently in folks over and over and over again. And I tested myself. Is it 11? Is it 9? Is it 8? Is it 15? Nope.
Right. Okay.
Coming back over and over again. So that led me to put together a research team with folks from the University of Michigan who had experience in developing psychometric tools. And I took those buckets and I expanded on everything I saw those individuals demonstrate, and and then called those for the unique characteristics of each of those, what I called passion archetypes.
Right. Okay. And these are your 10 archetypes, correct?
10 archetypes,
right.
The 10 passion archetypes. And then we developed a psychometric instrument that's able to identify them and measure them in the individuals who respond to the tool.
Okay. And do you mind again saying each of those? Because you said them and it was really great, but say them again.
The creator, conceiver. I talked about those two. Creator is the artist. The conceiver is the out-of-the-box thinker. There's the processor. That's the individual who loves to have data and information and put it in a swim lane, put things in order. There's the discoverer, the person who likes to vet ideas and benchmark things to make sure, has anybody else done it? Could we do it better? Or they love to set up a hypothesis and then prove or disprove it through experimentation. There is the teacher, an individual who likes to share knowledge and interestingly loves to learn, which is very often misunderstood about teachers. It's not just pontificating and being the expert, but it's also learning. There's the connector, the individual who loves to build social relationships with others and connect people to ideas and people to one another who can help to shepherd those ideas forward. There's the altruist. Those are the individuals who care deeply about not just what you're doing, but the impact that it's having on the larger world. And they care deeply, especially inside organizations, that the organization is actually delivering on the promise of its brand. It's not saying we believe in something or stand for something. It's actually walking the talk. The healer is the individuals who are, especially organizationally, care deeply about others when they're struggling or when they feel like they're in pain. And they'll step forward and help that person navigate their way through that pain point until they get to a better place. So very often their work is done behind the scenes. People don't even know, hey, I talked Joe off the ledge this morning. I spent 3 hours with him or her helping out.
Right.
There's the transformer who loves to orchestrate change and loves the idea of change. Those are individuals who have this mindset that out of this new change, there's a new order that's going to emerge, and I want to be part of creating a new order. So while most of us get nervous when things are changing, the transformer gets really excited. It's fun for them. And then finally, the builder is the one who has the idea and the vision for where we're going. And yes, there may be a million obstacles in the way, but no excuse is acceptable. No effort is too great. We're getting to the goal is kind of the mindset of individuals who have that builder archetype. So what's cool about this is all of us have all of these in us.
Right.
But what I learned through my research is that if we focused on your top 3, we have a pretty good idea of how you're wired from a passion perspective. That's where you want to focus. What are your top 3 passions? What are the strengths you enjoy because of them? What are the vulnerabilities you might be more subject to because you have certain passions? And how do you learn how to leverage the best of that so that you can be as successful as possible and as fulfilled as possible in what you're doing every day?
And this archetype profiler is in your book.
Yes.
And people can, if you don't mind showing your art.
Yes, it's in my the first book I wrote called The Purpose Linked Organization. And in fact, with this book, especially if you buy a new hard copy of the book, inside the back flap of the book is a code that will allow you to take an abbreviated version of the Passion Profiler and learn what your top 3 archetypes are. It will really inform your reading because every chapter in this book gets deep into each of the archetypes. And there's also a story on someone whose journey typifies that particular archetype. Leaders that I interviewed who use their archetypes in a particular way. And we kind of deconstruct their story for you too, so you understand where their passions were showing up.
Okay, well, that was a little bit promotional there. So buy the book, folks.
No, it's just a really good way to
It's a good way, yeah. And I really like the way you're saying focus on the top 3, because in so many of these behavioral assessments, people want to do it all, and you can't. And
you really can't.
You need to know yourself better. So
exactly. The other thing I want to make clear about this that I find so refreshing about this approach is that I'm not saying when you learn about your passions that there's anything you have to fix. You don't have to go become a passion that you're not now. If somebody on your team, or you're on a team and let's say the team is missing a particular passion, this is not the time to put your hand up and say, okay, I'll go be that passion, because that's saying I'm going to change my eye color, right? You're not going to do it. You can put some lenses over them, but your eye color is your eye color. Your passions are your passions. So my rule of thumb is embrace them. Embrace them and look for ways to utilize them in a meaningful way and in a way that allows you to feel that you're getting something out of the experience too. Because we'll lean into things that we feel like we're getting fulfillment from. We'll lean away from things that we don't.
And I like the way you said the top 3 help really tell you who you are and how you are as a leader. So that was really nice that your assessment has come up with that.
As a leader and as a person, that's the other thing. Remember, everything you learn about yourselves relative to your passions carries across the full breadth of your life. So it's how you are at home, it's how you are with friends, it's how you are at work, or how you have the potential to be at work. Because very often, especially in the work setting, we adopt certain stylistic behaviors that aren't really our own. So it's important to understand who you are first, and then you can make a conscious decision to actually be that.
And I think that's another podcast about the culture of an organization.
Oh my gosh.
Shut us down and not be our authentic self. That's a whole nother thing we will do.
Talk for hours about that. Yeah.
So Alaina, this leads into the next question with your archetypes. How does this have you have a person connect with managing successfully?
Great question. one of the things that I started to understand as I began to unpack these things called passion archetypes is that there's different ways each people with different archetypes will show up,
Mm-hmm.
and there's different things that they find fulfilling. And I think our tendency with old school management was treat everybody the same way, do everything for this everybody in exactly the same way, and you're going to win. It's just, wash, rinse, repeat. What I found in my work is that managing effectively is very individualized. There are some consistencies, like you're not going to decide to pay one person but not pay the other, right? That's a deal breaker, right? So you're going to do the consistent stuff that we should all be doing if we're leading a team. We're going to do. But if you want to get the best out of each person on the team, you have got to take time to understand who they are, just like you would want your boss to understand who you are, and in their efforts to lead you and to manage you. So I think that understanding, do I have somebody on my team who really seems to love taking others under his or her wing and helping them grow and develop? And, is that the person that always puts their hand up to mentor the new hires to our team? Maybe that person's a teacher. Maybe I give them more opportunities to do that. Or is there the person who always likes to be involved in ideation around big strategic things that we're trying to work on? Maybe I need to give that person more opportunities to do that very thing, because they obviously show a talent for it as well as a passion for it, and it gives them a sense of fulfillment. So beginning to sort of look at each person on your team as an individual, and even engaging in conversation with them about, what do you love most? What are the things that excite you and really light your fire and make you want to get up and come to work in the morning? Tell me about those kinds of projects or those kinds of activities that really make your heart sing, because we need to give you more of those things to do.
Yes.
Instead of asking you to work in the same old way we've always asked you to work. Maybe you've learned something since you've joined us that we're not even taking advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
And we need
That's
to be
wonderful. Focus on your strengths is part of how I see that. So
yes, absolutely.
That's great. But on the opposite side, Alaina, what do you do if there's just someone on your team who just doesn't seem to have passion, or they lack it? I am seeing a few of those in today's world, at all ages too,
Yeah. Well, based on your data that you shared about engagement, with 80% being disengaged, it's no wonder that you might run across somebody on your team who's just not feeling it, right?
Right.
I think that that's something that needs to be addressed pretty quickly when you find that happening. I would not let that fester for long periods of time if you're seeing that. Good, because I have a basic concern that when people are in pain, they're probably not good for themselves or anybody else around them. So it's really important to have, I think, a pretty serious and heartfelt conversation with that person about what's going wrong for them. Maybe it has nothing to do with work. It's manifesting in the way that you're seeing it at work, but maybe there's something going on outside of work that's distracting them, or that's not allowing them to give their fullest attention to what they're doing. Or maybe they are, in fact, feeling unappreciated in some way, undervalued in some way, underutilized in some way. So engaging them in understanding what's going on, and also engaging them in a plan for the way forward so that they can feel a greater sense of connection to their work, I think becomes important. Now, if they resist at all costs, no matter what you do, no matter what you've tried, they're still not a great performer. And on some levels, they may even be toxic for the organization. Then you have to make a different decision about, whether they continue to be part of your organization or not, because it's not just affecting you, it's affecting everybody they interact with. When they're negative, when they're what Gallup would call actively disengaged people.
Right.
That you don't want to allow to go on for too long. But for the most part, I find that if people are seriously interested in doing a good job and being a contributor in their organizations, if you give them the chance to tell you or explore with you what the possibilities are for them in terms of things that they can take on and work that they can be assigned that really relates and resonates with who they are, they tend to embrace that rather than resist it.
Well, that's great advice. And also a little bit of homework for the manager too. um,
Yeah.
but I love these different 10 archetypes, and I felt there's quite a few of those within myself, but I also, have seen different types within teams. And I think that, I'm sure that must be a good thing to have those different types on a team.
Actually, it's a massively important question to be able to answer for your own team. What is the archetype composition of my team?
Hmm.
Really important question. Most of us understand, what are the skill sets I have on the team? Well, this guy's a good numbers guy. This person over here is a great writer. This person over here knows all the technical ins and outs of the product. So you have that understanding of folks pretty easily. And when you look at somebody's resume, it's usually a recitation of all the skills that they probably gained over time based on the positions that they've had. What you don't know until you actually start looking more deeply for it is what their passions are.
Hmm.
You obviously, based on what I've just told you, we can measure that, but understanding the constellation of passions that exist on your team helps you to understand, where do I have enough of a certain passion? Where do I have too little of that passion on the team? Where perhaps are we overloaded on a
Hmm.
particular passion on this team that may cause us to think in a certain way and drown out any other voice to the opposite of the way we're thinking, right? Because that's not
Right.
good either. So being able to invite people with different passions into the conversation creates, first of all, the outcome that we want always, which is inclusion, right? We want people to be included
Right.
because we want cognitive diversity in the way we think about things. But it certainly allows us, when we start inviting different archetypes onto our team, to think through the lens of those passions and give us a perspective that might be different from the one I have.
Hmm.
And frankly, the more perspectives we have, the more intelligent decisions we can make,
Hmm.
because we're not making it through a very narrow lens of viewing the world. So
And
I work.
inclusion is, I'm sorry, inclusion is just such a huge thing today. And there are many sides of it right now, but I believe it's so important. How can your knowing about your passions and your purpose connect to inclusion, and then, as you were just alluding to, innovation and the work that's being done?
Exactly. Well, I think it's important to understand your passions, because when you do, you understand, here's how I can contribute in unique ways that's different from everybody else on the team.
Hmm.
And here's the lens through which I look at the world that's a little bit different from the person sitting next to me. That gives me a perspective that the team otherwise would not have arrived at had I not voiced that and
Hmm.
stepped forward with it, because you made space for me to do it because you wanted me to. And when I feel included, I feel relevant,
Hmm.
right? I
Yes.
feel that there's a place for me here. I feel that I'm being heard and I feel valued. When I feel all those things, guess what? I don't want to leave and go to the company across the street just because they're paying $5,000 more a year. Like, that's wonderful, but having the experience where I'm someplace where my skills are used, where my passions are leveraged, and where my value system matches the values of the organization, pretty tough to
Hmm.
replicate that. I'm gonna ride that wave all the way to the beach, right? So it's super
Right.
important. And when a leader is trying to, or a manager is trying to figure out, how do we make the best decisions? You can't make the best decisions by bringing onto your team everybody else who thinks just like you do. It feels really good, right?
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
we're all the smartest people on the planet because we all think the same way about this thing, and we agree on everything, and we don't have any dissension on our team because we all agree. When you feel that, watch out. It means you're not asking bigger questions.
Right.
You're not open to opinions and thoughts that are different from the ones that you have. And as a consequence, you can groupthink yourself into the
Mhm.
wrong decision and convince yourself that you've solved everything really, really well. And you have. You've solved the wrong problem really, really well, because you didn't have
Mhm.
anybody else on the team defining the problem for you differently than you're seeing it.
Well, wonderful advice there. Alaina, any short story about working with senior executives and leaders, and using this this tool, and anything that you have gone in and done, and you've seen some success.
Yes, actually, success comes in both ways. Success comes when things that are really good happen, and success comes when light bulbs go off, and you think, I finally got to this person.
Right.
That the way they're doing things is not quite what you want to do. So I'm going to start with that one first. So I was doing this project in Singapore with this leader who came to me and said, I've got these really smart people on my team. They're just really brilliant. We have some phenomenal discussions about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And I'm just so excited. And he said, but I just get frustrated because nothing ever seems to happen. We just don't seem to make any progress. And so when I did the passion work for all of the members of his team, and there were about 9 members of the team, I would say 7 of whom he had hired new directly since becoming the CEO of the company. And the other 2 were people who had come up from the ranks. And they were basically on advisory capacity to his leadership team. They were not full members because they were people at a lower level in the organization that were brought in for their technical expertise. So when I did that work, one of the things I found was that this leader had a Conceiver archetype. He was that big picture thinker, that strategic person, that out of the box kind of skate on the edges of conformity always person. And the 7 people he hired all had the same archetype, all 7 of them. And the 2 other people on the team did not have an archetype of action like builder or transformer. So as a consequence, these guys were getting into the room together and talking about all their big ideas and having just the best time talking about the most brilliant ideas ever dreamed up in the world anywhere on the planet. But nobody was implementing anything.
Right. Oh my God.
So I said, you might want to not hire you over and over and over again, which is basically what you've done here. You've hired yourself, and that's great. But we need some people who are going to execute, and that's not you, right?
Yes.
You're the idea person. You can't hire 7 more idea people without hiring somebody that's going to execute. So that's one story where it was a success kind of the backdoor way, right? In ways that he's like, oh, I get it now. I was having a really good time. I said, I bet you were. It was a lot of fun.
Well, and that's again what I love about these archetypes is there's a lot of differences, and I just agree with you. You need to have that balance, not yourself, the mirror, hire others.
Exactly. And then there's another group that I had a great experience with, and I'll never forget it. There was a team, senior leadership team I was working with, and I divided them into 3 groups, and I had all of them working on a strategic issue. And what I said to them was, your groups are not equally comprised of all 10 archetypes. So if you're missing an archetype on your team, go to one of the other teams and source that archetype and ask that person to come over and look at what you've come up with and ask them to look at it just through the eyes of their passions. What do they see? It doesn't matter that they're not subject matter experts in whatever it is you're working on. Just ask them to look at it from the perspective of their passions. There was one woman on the team who had a creator archetype, and she worked in compliance. That was her role. She was a compliance officer for the company. And one of the teams went to her, a guy who was head of a great big division of the company, and said, okay, you've got a creator archetype. We've been working on this thing for the last 2 hours. We're stuck on this one part here. Take a look at it with your creator archetype. What do you see? And she stepped back. She looked at all the stuff they had up on the board, and she said, well, I would do this and this and this and this and this. In like 2 seconds, she's looking at this, and they looked at her, their mouths dropped open. We've been looking at this thing for over 2 hours. You came in here and saw something we did not see. So he said, when the group came back together and each of the groups shared their results, he made the point that when I invited her to my meetings in the past, it was just because she was a compliance person, and I only invited her to my meetings if we had a compliance issue to deal with. He said, now I want her in every meeting, and I want her on speed dial.
Okay, right.
This person who's a compliance officer with a creator archetype, first of all, that seemed incongruous. What nobody knew is that she sang in a rock band on the weekends.
Oh, wow.
That was how she expressed her artistic talent.
Right.
As a rock band singer. So you just never know. You
Well,
think you know
again,
who to work
it's
with, but you
getting
listen to
someone
them.
else's perspective. I learn from my students. I've been teaching for many years, and they'll say things that I haven't even thought of in that way on the subject matter. I'm like, that's brilliant. And then
Mhm.
I love that this is a rock singer, you know, you know, very different from like a compliance person. So wonderful stories. Um, so the time is flying by here. So very quickly, I was thinking of something as I was preparing, Alaina. Like what if you're in the term mojo and you're doing what you think is your passion, but then
Mhm.
you get off track or there's a speed bump or we all change in our lifetimes. What can you do to either get back on track or maybe refocus your passions? I mean, that's kind of a big set question there.
Well, I think that we should remain open to the fact that how we express our passions may change over time. In
Hmm.
fact, it's probably intended to change over time. The things that we're exposed to today may trigger one of our passions more than the others, and we lean into that, and we're doing things that are associated with that particular passion. And we could look 10 years from now, and some other opportunity or some other event occurs, and all of a sudden, it's triggering passion number 3 instead of passion number 1.
Yes.
And we think, well, am I off base now because I used to do passion number 1, that was my thing. No, you're not off base. You're having another opportunity to express one of your top 3 passions, so lean into it. Don't question,
Hmm.
oh, did I make a mistake? No, you made yourself available to a different opportunity, a
Hmm.
different set of experiences that you can have. I believe that this notion of passion and this notion of purpose is an evolutionary process that we experience
Hmm.
throughout our lifetimes. And the way we achieve it today can look very different than the way we'll be doing it 20 years from now. But if you can tie what you're doing to an underlying anchor of a passion that you know you have, then I always feel like you're working on purpose, right? You're always doing something purposeful because it's connected to a deeper passion that you know is driving you. And that activity brings you joy to do, brings you a sense of fulfillment to engage in.
Hmm.
If you find that for some reason there's a set of things that have happened that makes you feel like I am I'm not passionate about this or I'm not excited about this,
Hmm.
then then it's worth exploring, has what I came here to do served its purpose?
Hmm.
Has it been a set of learning experiences that were right for me, that were right at the time, from which I've learned, and now it is time for me to take what I've learned and apply it in a different way or to apply it someplace else? I think that that's what our lives will be like going forward. I think many of the people that may be in your audience, your listening audience, your viewing audience, are in roles right now that if they look down the road 10 or 15 years from now, there'll be roles that they're in that haven't even been invented yet.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
think we have to be open to that, right? We're a constantly evolving world. But the one thing that you can hang your hat on is if you know yourself and you know your passions, you'll
Hmm.
always know that you have the tools that you need to decide whether I take role A versus role B. And the quick way to know that is, am I going to have an outlet for my passions in role A or role B? Am I going to be skilled to do role A or role B or willing to learn those skills? And am I going to be doing role A or role B in an environment that honors my value system? If you can answer yes to those questions, then run in the direction of whatever
Yeah.
role is.
Well, and this was so well said, this summary, because to me, you're speaking to our audience, newer and younger managers, but then also mid-level and people who are maybe in a senior level. You just really spoke to everyone. So that was just wonderful. Well,
Thanks.
I'm shocked that this time has gone so fast. I mean, it's been wonderful. And
Usually does when we get together. Have you noticed that?
yes, I just want to thank you so much for coming today and being in the podcast. And so let me just again tell everybody we have Alaina Love, the CEO of Purpose Linked Consulting, and she's written a book on um, the Purpose Linked organization. But what I want to do is promote your next book for next year, and her next book that's coming out in 2025. Discover your purpose and passions to bring your best self to everything and everyone. And so that's Alaina Love. So thank you so much for coming today. It's been a pleasure, Alaina.
Same here, same here. And the new book, the main title is Permission to Be You, because that's what I hope
That's right.
grant people.
Sorry.
This book is the ability to understand who they are and how to bring their best self to everything and everyone. So thank you so much. It was a joy. It was a joy.
Yes. Well, we will have a second one next year. So I just want to thank everybody for coming to this podcast. Again, Stephen Oliver, Dr. O, taking the next step in leadership. And if you need further assistance in anything, contact me at HRC Vision Leadership and Learning Consulting. And if you'd like some more information about Alaina Love, we will connect you to her organization, Purpose Linked Consulting. So again, thank you for coming today, everyone.
You've been tuning in to Next Steps to Leadership with your host, Dr. Stephen Oliver. You can find this show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcast, Spotify, and on our website, hrcvision.com. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others.